Lois Grant, and Van and I are part of the Union County Care and Family Support Coalition. After you remember that name. And so it's sponsoring this town hall.
And just real brief, we're a group of folks that came together about a year and a half, 2 years ago to talk about some issues that were going on in the system, what was working, what wasn't working. And so this is a collaborative of people, not necessarily agencies, but people. Myself, I'm a peer in the system, and I also am a person with co-occurring disorders. I have major depressive disorder along with substance use disorder. So, and I also am the CEO of a peer-run organization here in town. So briefly what we're going to do today is we have two, want me to do it?
No, it's okay.
You got it?
Yeah, you're on the roll.
Go.
First, I want to explain the restrooms are in there when you're coming through the door, and there's also some back there. Can they get back there now? At this, okay, they can get back there. Okay, and there's some evaluations that you all have. We're going to have, we have two panels, adult panel and a youth panel, and we're going to have the adult panel speak first. Right, okay, and then the youth panel, and then we're going to have
Questions and answers?
questions and answers.
And then Pamela, who's also a member of the coalition, will be doing an overview of what the coalition's done and maybe hopefully spark interest. You may want to join us, so that's kind of my goal for this evening.
Okay, so you're going to get a little bit more information from me because it won't just be an introduction about me, it'll be an introduction about why I'm here, and it'll be an introduction of all of these wonderful people here. Anyway, my name is Susan Moreno. I am a member of the coalition. Right now I work at My Kid. I work with some families that have children with behavioral health needs, and I also go out into the high schools and colleges and civic groups and churches and whoever will listen to me and talk about mental illness, teen depression, and suicide prevention. And the reason that I do what I do was because back in 2000, when they called me from the hospital to tell me that my 18-year-old son, Daniel, had schizophrenia, I didn't even know what it was. I had to go online and look it up. So that began my whole new, as it turns out, career and focus in life. As I learned about mental illnesses and learned that we needed to create more awareness about it and reduce stigma, I became very involved in local organizations as far as educating people, public speaking, fundraising, just kind of whatever direction it took me. So over the years I have met several of these people that are on the board. The youth I've just recently met, actually all of them but one. And I've really become a big promoter of recovery because although mental illnesses are not curable, they are recoverable and people do get better. And so when we, after we formed this coalition, we decided that we really needed to put together some kind of a event that could really highlight recovery so that our youth, which we were hoping there'd be more youth here tonight, but that's okay. Our youth could see, just exactly what recovery looks like. Recovery is not a destination. It's a fluid kind of thing. For people that are in recovery, they'll tell you that it kind of ebbs and flows. And it represents something different to everybody, and I'll let you guys talk about that a little bit more. But for me, recovery is if a person is able to get to a place in their life where they're happy, productive, hopefully getting out of bed in the morning, and living, a content, happy life. So these people will be talking more about their journeys and how they got to where they are. They're very compelling stories, all of them. And we'll let them all talk, and at the end we'll have some Q&A. So that's why those cards are there in the middle of your tables. So if you have questions, please, don't hesitate to write them down, and then we can ask them at the end of the panel. So let me introduce everybody. This is Ronnie Ashford. Ronnie Ashford is the mom of a family that has 3 children that all have a diagnosis. They're adult children at this point. And just as a little preview, she and her family will be receiving the Daniel Moreno Recovery Award this year. It's a recovery award that we give out to somebody in the community every year. And Ronnie and her family will be getting the recovery award this year because they really represent all aspects of recovery, because most people in recovery will tell you that it takes more than just themselves to stay in recovery. They need a support system, their family, and they need a lot of times medication, and they, what am I leaving out? Support, recovery.
Education.
Okay, I'm going blank now, I can't believe it. Anyway, but they need support of their family. That's a critical component for recovery, as well as their treatment plan. So everybody will be talking about this. Ronnie, kind of exemplifies, her family exemplifies the different aspects of recovery, because it takes the whole village, I guess you could say, to support a person in recovery. Christina Jasberg actually won the first Daniel Moreno Recovery Award. And Christina, I've known Christina for years. She's going to tell you about her journey. Christina is a tremendous advocate, and now she's doing a lot of public speaking and getting a lot of publicity with this whole Medicaid expansion. She's all excited about having been able to hug our governor a couple weeks ago. So anyway, she's got a great story to tell. Scott Whitley, I've known Scott for years. He and I both served on the NAMI board together. His story, again, is very compelling, and he will share it with you. Down here we have Kilby Lopez. Kilby, I met Kilby at My Kid, and he is now working at, are you working at Hope now?
No,
Okay, but you're
I'm
there.
attending.
Okay, you're
I
there.
do, I'm a board member at Hopeville.
Awesome, okay. And then Yvette, which I just met tonight, will be speaking. And Joshua, I know Joshua from My Kid as well. And then Marcy Rojas is a peer counselor, support.
Peer youth coordinator.
Thank you, at home. And Marcy is gonna actually talk with the youth with questions and things like that to kind of help them present their stories to you. So, do you guys have any questions to start with? Scott, you want to go first?
Okay, how much time do I have? I'm trying to ask.
5 to 7
5
minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name's Scott Whitley. I live with manic depressive illness, and my simple definition of living with my illness is I went from suffering with, can you hear me? Okay. What I do. Okay. Years of recurrent bouts of depression with intermittent hypomanias. I live with manic depressive illness with psychotic features. And so I learned, so there was years in there that were really tough. I was in the hospital 3 times for suicidal ideations. One time because I had a plan. A friend of mine came to the house and found that I was very actively suicidal and threatened to either call the police or I was going to go to, at that time it was Sam Heck, and I was admitted to for my suicidal ideations. I feel really fortunate I've got some distance from that now, and I do live with my illness. I think mental illnesses can be lived with. You don't have to suffer. Part of my recovery has been support from really close friends and support groups. I'll talk about them in a second. Education, I feel knowing about your illness is paramount for my recovery. And medication's been important. It's, you know, medication is sort of like the life raft, but you gotta learn how to swim to shore. So between I got diagnosed in 1989 with manic depression, and I sort of got balanced. I say I'm balanced with my illness because a lot of people use the word stable, but stable's where you keep horses. And I float around. I have good days and bad days, mostly good days now. If I have too good of days, there's a saying I have about manic depressive illness is, it's the only illness I know of that you call your doctor when you're feeling too good. Because that's why I use the term manic depressive illness, because mania is just as much as the illness, hypomania, the mild mania, as the depression. So between 1990, 89, and 2005, I probably had 50 bouts of major depression. And I ended up in the hospital for several of those. And I did have some hypomanias and some manic breakthroughs with a couple more major psychotic breaks. Living during that time, I felt like I was on emotional thin ice. That 1 or 2 or 3 months I'd be on top of the world, and then 2 or 3 months I'd be in the abyss of depression. I was lucky to find the right mix of medication, but if I hadn't had support through all those years, through organizations like NAMI, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, and friends, I wouldn't be here today. So I'm a real turning point is the first day I walked into a peer support group of bipolar support, DBSA, back in 1990. I found somebody who was talking about psychotic breaks. And that was really unique. I felt I wasn't alone. I mean, after my major break, I went manic in Mexico. I was working down there. I know it sort of sounds like a Jimmy Buffett song. But it was reality. Well, actually, it was not reality. I was insane. And being manic in Mexico and working in agriculture is not the most understanding group of people. And I almost got thrown in jail. I was lucky to get out of the country. I went to a 6-month serious depression. I probably should have been put in the hospital, but I knew, I just didn't answer my door. People didn't intervene. People tried to intervene, but so many people are afraid to Title 36 a person. You know what that is? Petitioning a person. And it would probably have been a good idea if somebody would, when I've been suicidally depressed, somebody needs to take over. I'm not competent to make my own decisions. And when I'm manic, I need to be probably put in the hospital too. So that's just a little bit about my background. I had some terrible dark days, but now I feel I'm living with manic depressive illness. I'm involved with the Depression Bipolar Support Alliance. We have brochures back there, and I can't say enough for support and education as being part of living with my illness. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. My name's Christina Jasberg. For the last 20 years, I've lived with a serious mental illness. At the age of 17, I was diagnosed with an eating disorder. Shortly after that, I began harming myself in other ways. Cutting was my main way of harming myself. And it was right after I graduated from high school and went on to the University of Arizona, where I had my first real bout with depression, where I couldn't even get out of bed for days. You know, I was then hospitalized after that for the first time of about 80 times I've been in the hospital, psychiatric facilities. I was kind of like a repeat. They knew my name at the hospital, which is never a good feeling, but my dad, when I was little, he was diagnosed with a serious mental illness. He has schizoaffective disorder, which is like schizophrenia with either bipolar aspects or depression. And so that really affected my life. Not only the biological component, but also you know, how I grew up in that environment of my father being very paranoid and very delusional. He thought the FBI was after him for a while, and they weren't, and it was very confusing as a child. So when I started getting sicker, I began to get delusional and have things like hallucinations and really scary stuff, especially for how young I was. Then I became very habitual about going to the hospital. It seemed like a safe place to me. It seemed like the world was so much that I needed some rest or something like that. And so I was going there about every month in my 20s, and finally we found that I needed something more than just a short-term hospitalization. So and you never hear about this, but I petitioned myself to the Arizona State Hospital, which is not something is common for a person to do. But I wanted to get better. It wasn't working what I was doing, and we didn't have money in my family to go and go to a private facility. That was a very scary time for me. I was on a lot of medications. I couldn't brush my hair. I couldn't dress. My mom had to help me with everything I did. And then when I got out of there, going back into society, I had lost a lot of my friends, and not for the reasons that we might think, that I thought at the time. It was mostly because they went on with their lives. They got married, they had kids. I thought it was all about me and my illness and that I was scaring people away. So during this time, I ended up taking one college class at a time. I was pretty persistent on getting my education, and can now say I finally have an associate's degree, which was a big thing in my recovery. And I'm going back to school this fall for my bachelor's, which I'm really excited about. But what got me to actually, I've been in the hospital so many times. What actually got things to sink into me that I needed to work on my recovery instead of let other people do my recovery for me is I hit bottom. I cut myself for the worst time ever, and I almost lost use of my left arm. And I never thought that it could get that bad. I thought I would have control over that for my entire life, as with my eating disorder as well, and that I could live like that for the rest of my life. But on that day that happened, I realized I got scared for the first time. I was never scared, never hurt. People always ask me that question. So I went to a hospital in Chicago and really worked on my recovery, and really was invested in it for the first time. So after that, I was still in and out of the hospital for the more psychotic type symptoms. But I continued to really work on my recovery, and I got the opportunity to talk at trainings for La Frontera, and I had a case manager who really, really believed in me. And she offered me my first job at the age of, I don't know how old I was, maybe 28. Was the first time I ever worked. And I got to work as a peer mentor, or a peer-to-peer person, as a recovery support specialist, and help people with what I've learned about my own recovery. And then I got to work at CPSA, which was really a neat experience, and from there things just got better. After I got my symptoms under control with medication, but not too much medication, because for a while it was too much, and finding that balance, things have looked a lot better for me. I had to stop working because of medical issues, but I felt at the time that I had let everybody down. It's really hard to be a peer advocate, and then for me it was, and then to stop working and helping those people and see them in the clinics as me as a client, or whatever you want to say, and to see them in a different role. And I felt that I let everybody down, and it was really hard. The last thing I'll say is that I recently have lived with suicidal and homicidal ideation, and that's because I was taken off a medication that I really, really depend on for making my brain work the way it should work. And this was due to some of the cuts in not being eligible for access anymore. And that's what I've been really advocating for, is because I almost lost my life due to not having this medication in my, of my own hands. And I've been really lobbying for this, and I'm here, I'm doing well, we're getting the medication from Canada, my family, and I just keep on keeping on. Yeah, thanks.
So, good evening. My name is Ronnie Ashford, and I'll start off by saying that I have recently, through this whole process, learned that possibly, aside from being a family member and a parent, that I am also a peer, because I do have PTSD from situations in my growing up years. And I have family members that have undiagnosed situations. And then, when I fell in love and got married, I married my high school sweetheart, and I just had this idea in my own head that if I married the person that I love so dearly, and because through this tremendous love we created these beautiful children, that they were going to be perfect. And we all know that nothing in life is perfect. So our children were born. We had 3 children, and as they were growing up, things happened that they don't come with instruction booklets, so we do the best we can and that we know how. And I think one of the first memories I have is my younger son had an accident, and it was our 2 boys were playing together, and they were building a fort, how boys do, and it was sort of like a dresser maybe about as high as these tables, and they were putting blankets and all kinds of things on the floor, and so that they could hide, and it was really a lot of fun for them. And one of the things that was holding the blankets on top was this like jacks, like ping jacks with the ball that, how we played when we were young with jacks and balls. Well, it was the shape of a jack, but it was made out of wrought iron or steel. It was like a bookend. And they had that holding the blanket, and were down on the floor and pulled the blanket, and that jack came off and hit my younger son right and smack in the middle of his forehead. Well, of course, I rushed him to the hospital, and they put a butterfly Band-Aid, and the cut wasn't big enough for them to stitch it. And I think this is how it is with all of these illnesses that we're all so familiar with, is that as long as it looks good on the outside, we don't really see what's going on the inside. In those days, I mean, this was over 25 years ago, no doctor ever said, like, there could be some trauma or brain trauma. It's just, let's just fix that little cut and everything will be fine. And that was the first of several injuries. Then maybe 5-6 years later, the boys were playing basketball with my husband outside, and that same son ran into like the corner of an adobe house, like right on the corner, and just like seriously hit his head and cut it open. And again, it was stitches, but no talk about what that could do. And then later on in his adult life, he got whacked like person to person, full force with a baseball bat in his head. And those are the kinds of things that, again, at that stage of my life, there was so much going on with 2 other children that I didn't know enough, and I didn't think that there was anything beside taking care of the stitches and the teeth that needed to be replaced and that kind of thing. And then with my daughter, when she was little, I would say she and I have talked about this, when she was 7 years old, I remember her waking up in the middle of the night and crying like incessantly. And at that time, we had just moved to Tucson, and it was a much bigger city. It was a different school. My husband and I were having trouble in our marriage, just trying to figure things out, although we loved each other and we're still together happily. It was one of those rough periods, and so I blamed myself. I thought, well, she's waking up and crying because she's afraid that maybe we'll get divorced, and I would sit and talk with her at 1 a.m. with this little 7-year-old, and she didn't know why she was crying. And there were times where she would say to me, the spaghetti is falling off the stick. I just can't keep the spaghetti on the stick. And I wasn't sure what she was trying to say. I just thought, well, it's this little 7-year-old just trying to make sense of her feelings, you know. And then when she was 16, being in high school, that's a time where most adolescents or teenagers at that time don't really want to share a whole lot with their parents. We had a wonderful family practitioner, and she did talk to him and tell him that she was having some strange feelings, that she didn't feel like she fit in at school, and that she was feeling that things her friends said were sort of ridiculous, and she didn't really like them so much, or she thought they didn't like her so much. And I think she wanted her independence, so she didn't really share a whole lot with me that he had diagnosed her with depression, and she was taking antidepressants, and she was on those antidepressants for, I would say, 10 or 11 years. During that time, she was also a wonderful musician and wrote music and sang and played the violin, and her dream, rather than going to the U of A where she had a full paid scholarship or a few other wonderful universities around the country, was to perform with Up With People. I don't know if any of you have heard of that group, but I grew up loving that group, and she thought she would get over her shyness by being in Up With People, and she got accepted, and it was a very exciting time. And then 2 months before she was to go, after 35 years of having this wonderful business, they went belly up. And so that rug was pulled out from under her, and she had given up her scholarships to do that, and she couldn't get them back. So that just started her on a whole different cycle. And I would say after that, it took about 8 or 9 years until it came around that she got the right kind of help and was diagnosed with bipolar type 2. And that's been in the last 4 or 5 years, and since then she's been very fortunate to have a lot of support from wonderful professionals, the right medications, and she's now going to be a senior in, I can't even say all the words, it amazes me, neuroscience, cognitive science, and psychology, and doing research this summer and really finding success in her life. And what I want to say as a parent is all during this time, and with my sons, who I didn't even know what their issues were, I thought their issues had to do with the fact that they had started experimenting with drugs and alcohol in high school. And so my husband and I just thought that that was the reason for all of their problems for the next 15 years, was just that they went from experimenting to using to abusing those drugs and alcohol. And we thought that was the only thing that was the problem. So the thing that kept me sane through all of that was that I joined a group called Al-Anon, and I was in Al-Anon for 28 years. And I would say that saved my life, because I think, as I started my story, that thinking that I was going to have these perfect children, and then all of these things in life come about, I felt like a failure as a parent. And I learned in Al-Anon that I didn't cause it, I couldn't control it, and I can't cure it. But I can love and support them from a detached way, and not continue to give in to things that are not healthy for them. So, as all of you were talking here tonight, support groups, DVSA, and all the other groups, I just feel that that's a lifeline for all of us. We just need to find the right ones, and thank you for allowing me to be here tonight.
My turn? Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I think that's the audience, just like the voice behind you.
Okay, do you want to share how you're connecting with the behavioral health system? Could you share with us?
Yeah, my name is Kilby. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay. I've been receiving services since I was 3. I am 18 years old. They diagnosed me at the age of 3 with bipolar, severe ADHD, and a sleeping disorder. And I started taking medication at the age of 7, as soon as I could, I guess. And I had no choice in deciding whether if I wanted to take pills or not, because I was 3 and 7, so really had no choice in that. And I went through lots of issues as a child trying to understand why did I have these issues and problems, and so it's difficult to understand as a child. What else? And right now I went through a lot, and it made me, I'm not gonna take any of that back if I could, because it made me who I am today, and all these people that helped me through these challenges are very helpful, such as my kid and Hope, and they all, and my family members and my friends from my school and my staff, everybody. So I have lots of people to be thankful for to help me through these challenges. And right now I'm a board member at Hope, the youngest board member, and I am the chair for Asia's Youth Council at my kid, but it's held at Hope. And what else do I have to say? I think that's good.
What are some things that have helped you through your journey and your recovery that you think would help other youth and young adults?
What helped me was trying to find people who can help me, and trying to find as much knowledge as possible to help me gain services and knowledge that help me go through these challenges, and just trying to find information about as much as possible about what I can do to help myself and stuff like that. So, and yeah.
What are some positive differences that you see in the behavioral health system?
Positive. I was going through service when I was 3, so a lot has changed. I can remember a lot of stuff. There was some positive things, such as my kid. I was going through some problems, such as like services that weren't really helpful, but I really didn't want to do my kid at the time because I had a lot of bad issues with services. And when I decided just to go for it, I had Marcy as my advocate, and I'm sorry, I always bring you up every time. And she helped me gain the strength to run my own CFTs and just take charge of my services. So very thankful for my kid and Marcy. Marcy's right there.
My name's Yvette. I used to get support from CFSS.
Any other services that you received in the past that's helped you in your recovery?
Actually, I've been with different services, and I had actually bad problems with them. I used to throw stuff to them. And now when I'm with CFSS, they help me a lot. And when I'm with them, they help me with my anger and a lot more things.
And what are some positive things that you've seen in your personal journey of receiving services? That you've overcome in your life? Yeah, like the good things that go on in your life now.
I've been a nicer person and respect people and learn how to be nice to a lot of people and do more things. I used to be not active, so I'm like more active. So I'm with the CFSS.
And where did you find hope? Where, is that when you figured everything was working for you and it was when you had CFSS? Thank you.
Hello. I'm Joshua. Sorry about that. I'm Joshua. I'm 15.
And Joshua, how long have you been receiving services to the behavioral health?
About 11 years.
And how has that experience been for you in your recovery?
Before Hope, it was ups and downs, and for every one step forward, it was 3 steps backwards, because they were giving me the wrong meds, and they diagnosed me by 5 different diagnoses, like 5 times wrong. So, and it messed with my body a lot, and then I finally found Acers, and my kids and my parents did too, and that's helped a lot to clear up things, as well as Cassie helps too.
Can you talk about some things that have helped you and services that have helped you through your recovery in your journey?
Acers has helped me put my voice out there. Let's see. I finally stopped going to Providence and went to Pantano. I finally have a counselor I can talk to, a therapist, and my doctor actually listens to what I have to say.
What are some good things that are going on in your life right now that you've accomplished?
I'm a sophomore. I'm already in college classes. Let's see. I already have, I took a test that'll help me get a job when I turn 16. I'm going to apply for a test for my permit, and when I turn 16 in June, I'm going to try and take my driver's license test. Let's see, I'm getting good grades, and I already have a grant for college for $5,000.
And for you, Kilby, what are some things that you've accomplished in your journey?
I am the first, actually, since I received services, I had trouble with as a child doing school, but now I'm the first Lopez to graduate from my family. So, high school. And, I actually in a program called Goodwill Futures program, and I qualify, and I'm gonna get a job there, and they're gonna help me through getting those job opportunities, and what else? I possibly gonna go for college when I figure out exactly what services I want to help out and do all the stuff I want to do. And I also received a reward for outstanding citizenship from my school, and it was just passed, and on the 21st is my graduation.
And what are some good things that have happened in the past for you that you've accomplished?
I already graduated from high school. That's it.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay, are you guys done?
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay, so that kind of completes the panel. I want you to know that Kilby, I think, has spoken publicly one other time.
And also done I also done 3 other forums. Two of them in Phoenix, and the first time was what was it called, the last year's,
Recovery and wellness.
Recovery is Wellness Forum. That was my first time, and since then I've been trying to get better at speaking, and I think I did pretty well today.
Yes. And that was the point I wanted to make, was that I think Kilby's kind of becoming a professional at this. But this is the first time, I believe, for Yvette and Joshua both, so.
Actually, inside the 2010 My Fest, I was the only one there representing the Tucson My Kids.
Oh, okay, cool, thank you. I think they did an excellent job.
While everybody's writing their questions, I just wanted to share another point that I felt I was taking too much time, so I didn't share this, but it's something that I share when I speak to audiences, which I do because I write bilingual children's books. And the main thing is, my message is to everyone here, all of us, even on the panel, is to find your passion. I think that's so important, and I found mine when I was 15 years old because I fell in love with my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and it was not something my parents were too happy about. So I got sent away to school, and I was miserable and lonely and angry and sad, and yet that's where I found my passion, and that was writing. I loved to write, and I would wake up in the middle of the night in a panic because I was lonely, and I would write poetry, and it helped me heal. So for me, writing is healing, and I think for everyone here, it could be sports, music, talking on a panel, being on a board, helping someone. Those, finding our passion, I just think is so important to help us stay in the positive flow of our life. So thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of questions here.
No, go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to generalize here. They were addressed specifically, thank you, to certain people, but I think that we have everybody here can answer in their own way because it was different experience for each of you, from what I'm hearing. Okay, how old were you when you actually became invested in your recovery? I think some of you spoke as to when that time came, when you noticed that you were now taking part and you were taking charge of what you were doing, taking charge of your recovery. So anybody want to answer that question about when that happened, Christina?
It was in 2001, about 13 years ago, where I finally started to learn about myself. I was very disconnected from myself my entire life. Kind of was whoever you wanted me to be, I would be. And I started a lot of psychotherapy, and finally started learning about myself, and from that point started to kind of like myself. I didn't feel like I was so bad. And then from there it just evolved into love, and that's when I wanted to take care of myself and wanted to invest in my recovery.
How old were you?
I was, that's a good question. I think I was,
It was 13 years ago.
yeah, I know, my brain's, yeah, so I'm 37 now. So I was 24, sorry.
So it seems like the youth somehow have arrived at that place of recovery at a younger age. So why do you think that happened? Why do you think that the three here are already invested in their recovery? What do you think, can I ask you, what do you think, what's making a difference that you're invested?
What I say is I see all the people that that are already doing this, so it makes what I feel is it makes me want to do it, too, because they started older, but they're doing really good, and I want to do the same thing they're doing. So it empowers me for what they did. So.
Thank you. Okay, this has to do with your self-image. when did you realize that you were an okay, good person, and that you discovered something about yourself you felt good about? Because part of recovery is acknowledging that you're worthwhile and that you're worth investing in. So when did you come to that realization that, yeah, I like myself, I'm worth struggling for? And you, Ronnie, you're shaking your head, but
Well, I think I felt that way when I discovered my writing. And when I was sent away and I was so isolated and lonely, and yet I felt that there was something to live for and something that I was good at. And so I would say when I was like 15.
I think Joshua and I would like to say something.
I know I have self-worth, and I discovered that around when I was 12. It took me a while because I pretty much had to learn that on my own. I mean, I did have a lot of support networks and stuff, but most of the time they weren't good enough, or they weren't structured enough to actually make a difference. And I was with CPS, so I couldn't really see my family as well, so it kind of stunted my growth mentally in a way. So I pretty much had to become self-reliant, besides my brother who helped me out a lot.
For me, it was, as younger, I always thought I was the problem because I was always told that, always having the cops called because it was me that was the problem. So it took like 5 years ago when I tried my kid, and that's when I received services from my kid, and they helped me understand that I'm the one that's gonna make the difference, and I need to show people, and I need to understand that it's not me with the problem. It's a home thing, and it's a constant, like it's not the person, it's the thing that's causing the, like it's a reaction. And now, as a child, I was always kicked out of, not kicked out, but thrown to school from my ADHD and bipolar, crazy, hyper kid. Yeah, so when I received service from my kid, they helped me understand that it's not me. It's not anybody's fault, so, yeah.
we got a couple questions here that have, oh, good. Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt that. I think these kind of are lumped together in that, what was most helpful to you, if you can think of like a therapy or a counselor or a program, or when you were in the hospital and ready to get out, how did you prepare yourself for the world? In other words, what was most helpful to you? Was it someone saying something to you, someone offering you something better? What helped the most in these situations where you're getting out there and exposing yourself to living again? Anybody want to answer that? Joshua?
What helped me the most and who helped me the most was my brother and my family. And I was doing a lot better when I was with some foster parents called Jesse and Ray. They were really nice and understanding. But I wasn't completely healed then, and I was still receiving some bad services, so it's mostly my brother who helped me out through life. Unfortunately, he's not here today, so.
Here's some questions having to do with decision-making in the process. As we know, the theory is that we work as a team. The professionals, the staff, the peers, all of us work as a team to try to help in this recovery, whatever you view as recovery. So what was most helpful as a team? Did you get along with your team? Was that good? Or was the team very helpful to you? Did they have the information you needed? Did they guide you in the right direction? What about that team? And then what didn't work? Like someone's asking about the medication. I think someone said here they tried different medications and went through this experience of what didn't work and finally arrived at what did work. So I think what they're asking is how do you bypass all the what doesn't work to get to the what does work? Save some people some time.
Well, for me, I mean, it took so long. I did try probably every medication out there, but it was persistence and being my own best advocate, I think. And if you can't be your best advocate at certain times in your life, want somebody be able to do that for you, whether it's a family member or a doctor or a therapist or a friend. You know, if you don't have your own back, have someone have your back, because things aren't always the way they should be. And everybody's in this learning process of recovery. So definitely I've learned how to be a great advocate for myself and to get what I know that I deserve.
We have a closing question here.
Can I
Sure.
want to say something?
Go ahead.
When I was 3 years old, they told my mom that I would not be, when I do get on the medication, I would not be able to function without them, a single med in my system. But I went, at one point I had like 10, almost 10 meds at one point of my life. But now I'm actually down to one pill, and the only default is I'm not sleeping as well, but I'm doing really good with just that one pill. So I kind of slapped that guy in the face.
Can I say something else? I took lots of meds, and I don't know how I got through it. I was on the verge of collapsing and almost killing myself. I had several attempts, and I just saw how beautiful life was, because as a baby I almost died, and I saw that if I struggled to survive as a child, then for some reason I had to stay alive. So I pushed through all of that and just shut off everyone else's hate and misunderstandings, and just protected myself with my family's love and my faith, and just my realization that I needed to live, if not for anyone else but myself.
I started one on that roulette wheel of medication and different combinations, and I found less has been more for me, like you spoke about. And it's getting a doctor you can be a partner with and that will listen. That just in that 20 minutes you have with them, you need to be able to express yourself, have 4 or 5 good questions, and stand up, as Christine says, advocate for yourself. So in my case, I'm down to 3 medications now. At one time I was taking 9 or 10, multiple antidepressants and everything, and then we simplified everything. And then we tried to simplify it too much, got down to 2, and I got symptomatic, and then we brought it back up to 3. But the medication, in my experience, doctors prescribing medications are given an educated guess. And the more you pile on, the more complicated the situation becomes. And that was my experience. And so working with the doctor is so important. And like, if you're so depressed you can't handle anything, as Christine put it, have somebody take your back for you. Because these medications sensitizes your brain in a certain way. And it's not only, from my experience, going off the medications the right way was just as important as going on them. And it was a long road to get the right medications.
When I was little, I had sleeping problems because they broke in my house. And then after that, like 2 days after, they found out I had to drink medicine for anger and stuff.
So the last question is, and I heard about this before, and you all are probably aware of this, what role do you think animals or pets play in a recovery? Do you all have furry friends?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. I got diagnosed in '89, and I got a cat about that time. I had him for 22 years, and he passed on. Once he found out I was doing okay, he said it's time to move on. He was a unique cat. He meditated a lot. He was a Tibetan Buddhist. He was sort of like a scientist. And now I've gone to the other side. I have a dog, because I'm up to walking a dog, taking care of a dog, a puppy, in fact. I've never had a puppy. And it gets you, it's so important with my depressions to get out of your head, to do something kind for somebody, you know. And sometimes just cleaning my cat box was enough to keep me in reality.
Anybody else have an animal story?
I do. I love this question. I just have to say that because can you hear me okay? I have 2 ferrets and a bird, and they've been so therapeutic for me, but the most important thing about them is that they've kept me alive because I know that I need to take care of them. I don't have any children, so their lives are in my hands. If I were to leave, I can't leave them. So it's kept me alive many times.
Do the ferrets try to eat the bird?
They don't mix.
And I noticed too, Christina, that you do a lot of bird watching.
Yeah, I was a docent at the zoo. I bird watch all over southeastern Arizona, so I love nature and animals. So yeah, I definitely loved this question.
Well, I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank everybody for being here. Oh, you have another furry animal?
Yeah. I had like tons of animals, but one I have 2 right now, 2 chihuahuas. One of them's mine, one's my sister's, but the one is mine. She went through hell and back with me. Excuse my language. And when she was a little puppy, my mom was holding her on her neck, and she decides to jump off and falls and cracks her neck. That's a horrible story, but she my mom picks her up and just puts her neck back in place. Like, Mom, we gotta take her to the hospital. No, she's fine. We're watching her throughout the whole day, and she just was back to normal. And that story kind of makes me feel like me, because it makes me feel like if she can survive all this stuff, then maybe I can too. So she gives me strength and all that.
Can I ask something? Yeah. I gave you a card, maybe you didn't understand what I was asking.
Okay, go ahead.
Christina and Scott also, but what you've said, and you're in the hospital so many times, did no one sit down with you and give you any guidance for when you got out of the hospital, what you needed to do? I mean, it just seems that if you're in there so many times, and, from what I'm hearing, it's not like there's any guidance for you, and that certainly could be the case, because I know what goes on. So not until, 80 trips, it sounds like somebody, helped you.
I think people were helping me along the way. I mean, definitely, it was a big learning curve there, especially trial and errors with medication. It wasn't an easy puzzle to put together. A lot of my illness was biological, and a lot of it was environmental from when my dad was very sick. So it's very complicated. And I wasn't just thrown out, I didn't feel, to the wolves, after I got out of the hospital. But I honestly thought that I could do it this time. And I did have a therapist, everybody kind of was working as a team, but it was a long process. And I do feel like the hospital was definitely one of my coping mechanisms at the time. It's how I coped with life. And a lot of people have different ones, Mine was a hospital. It wasn't didn't give me much, but I mean, at those times it did help.
But you just don't want it to be, though, that you go in the hospital, you think you're okay, and then you get out of the hospital.
Right, and I honestly thought I was okay every time I was released.
I was in the hospital 3 times. One time, the longest stay was about 3.5 weeks, and so my experience is different. But coming out of the hospital, that protected, safe place, and being left to yourself, I was fortunate I had friends that would help me out. And there is that transition from being in a hospital, having people prepare your food, wake you up, give you your meds, and then all of a sudden you're responsible for yourself. I did some transitional housing through La Frontera. But I would go home and friends would check on me and, you know, come over, go for walks, little things, socialization, and I had to take care of my cat, How Weird. I mean, he was a stabilizing force. It sounds strange, but, you know, I'd get into feeding him again, friends, you know. I just had a lot of support in my life. And I think without support, I don't know if I'd be here today.